So welcome everyone to another edition of the Growth Seekers Leadership Mastermind, where we talk all things leadership. And leadership we define as an interaction where influence happens, where we endeavor to influence ourselves to become the people that we're supposed to, and in order to have the success that we want, the feelings that we have. Also to influence others to take actions that they need to take in order to have the lives that they want. And today, the topic that kind of came to mind was the imposter syndrome. We hear a lot about it, especially in the corporate world. There's lots of it, but even not in the corporate world, just even in our own daily world, we have it, right? And the imposter syndrome isn't something that is nobody walks around with it all the time. We have moments of it. Our lives are lived in moments, and in the same way that a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, nobody walks around with one mindset. And from the 7 levels of energy, nobody walks around in just one energy level all the time. So it's definitely fluctuating. But one of the things about the imposter syndrome is that what I've discovered as a coach is that at the root of it, it's because of has to do with the non-acceptance of our lower level of emotions. When things aren't going our way, if we don't accept those emotions, we're going to have a hard time accepting, or we don't accept that version of ourselves. We're going to have a hard time accepting the version of ourselves that's actually effective, productive, and really having some really good things happen in your life, right? So, at the root of imposter syndrome is the non-acceptance of your emotions when you're not at your best. But also the imposter syndrome also affects things like your ability to have vision. It affects your ability to adapt to things. And the reason why an imposter syndrome, as we've all played the game of snakes and ladders, imposter syndrome is like moving up the game of snakes and ladders and then hitting a snake and then going back into a catabolic drop where we don't feel worthy, good enough, significant, relevant. All those things happen, and it's really interesting because it happens in the internal world, our internal world, right? Because everybody else can see somebody that's successful or appears to be successful, but yeah, when they're by themselves and we're all by ourselves and we really be honest with ourselves, sometimes we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. If people really knew what I was like, they wouldn't think so great of me. Whatever your inner critic decides to beat up on you, whatever your mommy issues, your daddy issues, your life issues, they all come up, right? So yeah, and what happens is your inner critic, he's just so happy to use that against us, right? Our inner critic just beats us up on it. And so yeah, so there's different ways that it also affects vision, which we'll talk a little bit more, and how it affects our ability to adapt. And adaptability really has to do with resilience. So yeah, so there's lots to this, but before we get started, so I've set a few things on the table, but I wanted to see if Mark, my co-facilitator on this, would like to add some more to the table or pick something up and just prime it.
Yeah. I guess the thing that sticks out for me is I've had far too much experience in this topic. And you know, I think it's something that it's really the conflict. Like before the call, Gigi, we were talking about the vision, right? And you have a vision in your mind's eye of what you're working towards, but then your ego kicks in and you look in the mirror and see where you're really at. And it's the comparison, like you said, and Walter, it's that snakes and ladders and managing the emotional state along the way. And also I think the thing that's really where the ego can be very detrimental in this area is like we talked about last week with the fixed based mindset and the growth based mindset, right? And accepting. growth and the lessons of life, and understanding that the vision is the destination, but your life is the journey. And not really accepting the journey and focusing on the vision. You know, and I think part of it too is a lot of us, and I'm just going to assume to speak for myself, right, have been very much conditioned to live with the end in mind and live with the end in the present moment to get into that vibrational state. And there's absolute truth to that statement, but there's also acceptance of where you are in the moment, and not to give up, not acceptance in the sense of surrendering, but acceptance of this is the stage that you're at in the journey. And I think balancing that mental mind tightrope walk is where imposter syndrome really develops. And yeah, that's been my experience thus far. So anyways, I just wanted to say I love the topic, and I think it's very much relevant to what we're all doing. So I'm curious what everybody else has to say of their
Just wondering,
experiences.
were you feeling like an imposter when you were talking right now?
No,
Okay, there you go.
I got too much experience.
Anybody else have any starting thoughts on the imposter syndrome and how it relates to yourself? And how do you feel if you have experienced it? How have you experienced it, and what have you learned about being in that moment where you felt like an imposter, or even why you think you would feel as like an imposter?
I have a definition here if you want me to read it.
Sure, might as well.
Imposter syndrome is defined as a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. The imposter agonizes over the mere possibility of not being who they portray themselves to be. On the other hand, the imposter from those old movies I adore may even embrace the actual definition of imposter, and a person who pretends to be someone else in order to deceive others, especially for fraudulent gain.
Yeah,
that's what it says.
And authenticity is what we were talking about last week, just to be clear, and it directly correlates to that, Rayanne.
Yeah.
Yeah. So imposter, when we think about the imposter syndrome, right? It's really interesting because a lot of our energetic ebbs and flows always seem to have seem to be affected by our perception of who we think we are. Right? If I was to ask everybody, who are you? Right? Many of us here would go into our thought world. Well, I was born here. I have this many siblings. I went to school there. I did this. I got this degree. I'm looking to build this business, whatever, right? Like you'll tell a story, right? But really they're really just thoughts. So, and it's also a lot of those thoughts are also driven by your feelings, right? Remember how I've always said that we're energetic beings having a human experience of cause and effect, and we have feelings, we have thoughts, but we're not our feelings, we're not our thoughts. We're having feelings and thoughts. And how the neuroscientists believe that 95% of our in-the-moment decisions are based on our subconscious, and our subconscious stores our past in the form of feelings. Nothing more than feelings. Sorry,
I feel like we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it too is that a lot of our perception of who we are really has programmed by our mommy issues or daddy issues. Like I know it was a bit humorous, but you know what? We when we were young, we took a lot in. We took a lot in. We believed our parents, we believed the media, we believed the TV programs, we believed everything, right? Because we didn't really have a real sense of who we were. So we were just we were taking what was being said of us And then we were starting to figure out who we thought we were. And one of the things that I think a value that really was really relevant was that a lot of the values that were given to us from our parents had to do with survival and security, right? So we were put into this mentality of achievement and accumulation. And so all of a sudden we started to have this perception of who we are being influenced by our upbringing, right? And then our upbringing, then we start having our own experiences with achievement and accumulation, right? So sometimes we did things and we failed, and sometimes we did things and they worked out well, right? So there's been a lot of things in our lives that have happened to get us to the point where we would finally get to the imposter syndrome, right? It didn't happen overnight. So on that, Mark, and then your Gallum.
Yeah, I wanted to just add that I've heard multiple speakers talk about this issue. Some of the world's most successful people, and they've started from either humble beginnings or a variety of different states, but they all say the same thing is once they get into the room where this imposter syndrome kicks off, you get to see that the people that you perceived previously as having higher status or were more successful or whatever else, it's all just an illusion. And I've had that same experience, whether it be walking into the lobby of the Royal Westmoreland down in Barbados, which is sort of a high-end private community down in the Caribbean there, and just and or many other rooms that I've walked into with vice presidents and different people of high status. You quickly realize that these are just human beings, and they all have flaws. Every single one of them. The only difference is they're all have various degrees of expertise in maybe a specific niche. So maybe somebody's really, really good at one thing, but it doesn't mean the rest of their life isn't a train wreck. Right? So you could be like whatever, incredible, talented, whatever it is, but it doesn't mean that you have it all together in all the other areas. And I think that's where imposter syndrome can really be triggered, is because some of us will focus on developing a skill or a talent in a specific niche, which gets us into that feeling of imposter syndrome, but yet the other areas of our lives are underdeveloped. So I just think that it's a false negative mindset about the actual process of being a human being itself, which is we're all here to learn and grow, and we're all learning and growing. And yes, some of us who evolve to a leadership position in one area of our lives doesn't mean we're good at every area of our lives. And I think that's where as it relates to this particular call, because this is obviously a leadership mastermind, I think leadership is encouraging having a growth-based mindset yourself, but then second of all, supporting others in their growth and accepting of your flaws and growing through them and into them, right? So none of us are going to be perfect at everything. Like, Walt, you're a way better coach than everybody here on the call is, from my perspective, right? Including myself. And, but it doesn't mean you're the best hockey player. You might be the best hockey player amongst everybody on this crew. I don't know. Right. But I'm sure, if we're talking about art and painting, Gigi and Rayanne are going to blow us out of the water. Right. And so I think we all have unique skills and talents. And I think part of leadership is recognizing where people are strong and then supporting where people still want to grow. And I'm complete.
And your Gallum, I know she's laughing away at something. There's something going on here.
Okay, you
Is
can
that-
give that credit to Rayanne for that one, but for me, as far as this painting and drawing,
Yeah.
yeah,
I love your
again,
painting. It's beautiful.
yeah, but mine is, this part of it is thought. It's not something by nature. So there's a different for me. But thank you, and that's also perception, right?
Oh,
Um,
are you having an imposter syndrome?
No,
right
I keep seeing
No,
those on
that's-
on everybody's windows. That's what I.
Yeah.
now, one thing I will say is, for me, since Neographica is when I start to understand this stuff that's inside, right? So from that moment, I am grateful for God giving me body, because I wouldn't show up with my feeling if I show up just with my thought, just the thought self show up all the time. I have said this to every human that shares their emotions and all that. For me, I think every person that sees me will shoot me, because it's not pleasant all the time. But I'm grateful for the body, so I can look like or resonate with people so they can accept me. In saying that, which gives me the ability to accept that I'm not the only one. I just happen to have experienced that I have this bad emotions, whatever the reason they have entered in me, and they make me feel like sometimes projects, ideas are difficult to deal with, or humans difficult to deal with. But once I go through the process of doing Neurographica, I realized actually all that stuff existed in this world in my head. They were never actually a reality. So whenever I connect with human now, whether if it is family members, friends, or relationship like I meet online, I can relate to people because I know we all have these. And thank you for defining the definition, actually, Rayanne, because that helped a lot. Um, we all have that moment, and whatever the subject or project it is, it just makes me to accept myself better and other people better, and be able to show up with the physical body, not just with the thought. That's
Yeah.
what I want to share.
And what's interesting as well too to that is like here we're talking about artists, and I know Kasha has I think you have a degree in fine arts, don't you? Yeah. Here's someone who has education beyond all of us here, right? And when it comes to that, right? And it's I think a lot of it too when I've because I struggled with that for a while, right? Because I had a lot of friends that were very educated, right? And remember how we were taught that it was about achievement and accumulation. And sometimes when we don't have something that we perceive you need to have in order to be validated, we have a tendency to not honor ourselves the way we can. Because there's I think that higher education has its advantages, but I think that for a few of us that never got that opportunity, we learned things differently. There's a different way of learning, and I think that really understanding that your skill set as a leader, right? Because it's that ability to influence ourselves to take actions, but influencing others really has to do with our connection and our understanding of who we truly are, right? Because the idea that we're good in one area and another's effective as another, it's because the roles that we play in life isn't who we are, right? It's what we do, right? Who we are is what we bring to the table. And the issue in imposter syndrome isn't what we do, but who we are or who we perceive ourselves to be, right? It's the perception, right? It's because we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are, right? Mark, you're on mute. Once again, you're saying something really profound, but you're not. coming through. Big
Yeah,
shot.
thanks, Walt. I was gonna say that, yeah, I completely agree. It's a perception thing. This is where I was trying to highlight with ego, right? Because you can be a phenomenal person in even your industry, your niche, and still have an imposter syndrome because of it's a negative mindset. You have don't see yourself measuring up because you don't give credit to yourself for your own successes or your own whatever along the way. So imposter syndrome can be a complete and total delusion. You might be hyper successful and still have imposter syndrome, right? And then I've also seen it, and I like for a couple of young gentlemen I know, they were born into a very wealthy family, right? And these two brothers, only two brothers in the family, although their parents were hyper successful, they were complete and total train wrecks, right? Like, I mean, complete homeless drug addicts on the street, uh, you know, and so just because you're put into a position of quote unquote status in the as we measure it in society, which is usually based on our performance in a given area and or how much wealth we've accumulated, right? It doesn't mean that it's not a complete and total lie, because what's going on behind the scenes can be a completely different story. And I think that in truth, in some ways, I think people that are born into those situations where they have perceived high status, even though they haven't done anything to earn it, they probably have to deal with imposter syndrome far more. And a lot of them turn to alcoholism and drugs and all sorts of things to sedate themselves. So I want you to, I guess the point I'm really trying to highlight is imposter syndrome is usually a negative self-image, which means you've acquired status that you don't feel you earned or deserved. And it can be either true or false, but either way, it doesn't matter, because if you have a growth-based mindset and you are growing into that role that you've been handed in life, right? Then you and accept yourself, right? Then you will be okay in that you're growing into the position you've acquired and or the position you've earned because you don't believe that you've earned it for whatever, psychological reason. But either which way, the solution is the same, is what I'm trying to highlight here, which is have a growth-based mindset, right? And focus in on the things that are within your control, right? And in this case that I'm trying to highlight here, of whether some people have done phenomenal work, like they'll be an exceptionally talented athlete or artist or entrepreneur or whatever, and they'll still feel like they're an imposter. Whereas somebody else who's born into hundreds of millions of dollars and hasn't earned it, and they know they haven't earned it, right? They can still grow into that as long as they focus on the growth, right? And they don't have to turn to drugs and alcohol to sedate themselves, because both people end up in a situation where they're trying to sedate their mental pain, right? Or grow into themselves.
And I think you've got Yanni going here. So Yanni, what's the solution?
Kind of Mark what kind of say what I was about to say. In my perspective, in my life, I noticed it's linked to failure, the imposter syndrome, because I feel I do a lot of things for emotion. Like I feel like doing something and I do it. But once I'm in there and I think, like a lot of people tell me, it's because you don't think things through. And I was like, I don't, because in the moment I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So when it comes to the technical, and I kind of connect with you too, Walter, that you said a lot of my friends are educated, a lot of my friends are able to provide or get me in a room where I'm enjoying myself, right? So being able to, because I'm in a room with a lot of intellectual people. Once I'm already in there, I'm like, what am I doing here? Right. But the reason I got there is because of the emotion and how I was being, how I was carrying myself. And I feel it's just how I was feeling. And once I guess, start thinking and I start realizing where I'm at, that's when it kicks in. And I'm like, okay, how am I supposed to act? What am I supposed to do here? And I think Mark touched that very nice, where he says, all it now from here, all I have to do is grow to that and be okay with my growth. So that's where I'm hard on myself, because then once I start thinking too much is when I start descending, right? And being able to be graceful with oneself in order for us to elevate ourselves intellectually, because I didn't go more than high school, right? But I'm in a room with a lot of people that have accomplished a lot, and I want that. And sometimes I'm like, that's where I'm hard on myself. I'm like, oh, well, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. But I'm understanding that everybody has their journey. Like Mark says, it's just giving that space to grow. And that's for me.
Hoorah!
I think just before I go to Mark here, I think the Mello said something really profound, and it always, because part of the imposter syndrome is also there needs to be a willingness to there's a willingness to change that, and in order to have that, Joe Anthony DeMello says that for change to happen, it's essential to have awareness and understanding. Right. And awareness means being able to, at any given moment, being able to take inventory of where you are this very moment. And understanding is also what Yanni said was really profound, was that is all these failures, right? And when you can look at the failures as the route to mastery, because nobody ever masters any role without failure, without adversity, without what people call mistakes, right? Because it all ties into what Ryan was saying, adaptability, right? The thing is I remember in sales, I used to be really I used to play games with my mind when I had to do sales calls. I would always be looking, and I'd enjoy rejection, right? Because if I was rejected, it means that I was calling, right? And I used to think that I'm one no closer to a yes, right? So I used to always kind of play games with myself that way, and I think that part of awareness is really understanding where you're at, and when you understand that mastery, and even the idea of the foot dropping, you know how, and everybody talks about you're just waiting for the other foot to drop. I did a big reframe with a client this past week because he was experiencing a little bit of that. And he said, yeah, everything's going well in my life. I'm just waiting for the other foot to drop. And I said, do you realize that a lot of people describe walking as falling? Like you put one step and then you lift your leg up and then that falls in front of you and then the other. So what would happen if, instead of looking at this other shooter drop as a negative thing, but really just as a process that you continue to go through as you learn to master this particular role, that if the other shoe does drop, that's okay, because you'll lift the other one and you'll put that forward and you'll keep moving forward. And so it was a big reframe of this. And he goes, man, I never looked at it that way. I go, no, you haven't. That's why you pay me, right? So that's what I do. I think about that kind of stuff, right? But anyways, that was just a thought. Rayanne, and then Mark and Rayanne, whoever was first.
I was just thinking about when I became an artist. I said by the time I'm in my 50s, I'm going to be an artist. But then I became 50 and then I realized, oh, I haven't taken any art school and this and that. And I was trying to think how I could do all that. So then I just started painting, right? And then I had this friend of mine who's gone to art school forever, right? And I had painted a couple of really nice paintings, and she's like, oh, well, you'll just be able to get $100 for those or whatever, right? And then that was when I realized, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be an artist. I haven't gone to art school. Like it kind of, but then I went on to sell one painting for 500 and another one for 350. And she was trying to tell me I could only, because, you know, I didn't have the ranks under me, that I couldn't sell them for that. But and you know, she kind of burst my bubble when I just, you know, started being an artist and then kept moving forward, you know, so, but I didn't go to any art school. I just taught myself, so.
But what's really interesting is that she had this husband that kept buying her paints and these different things. I would just bring them home, wouldn't say much. Just then I think a lot of that too is when your Gallum talks about the painting being her emotions. When we lost our son, almost 4 years now, this November will be 4 years since he passed. I knew that I was prepared to grieve, right? But I didn't think Rianne was. So what I did is I started buying her frames and canvases and paints. And I just gave that to her because I knew that's something that would help her. And I think that what happened is that she was able to process her emotions through her paintings, kind of like your Gallum. So your Gallum, really, both you and Rianne were doing the same thing. And when we look at you both right now, first of all, you both have paintings on behind you, right? But yet look at this. This is Kasha's got she's the one that's got the degree in fine arts, right?
But she's amazing with graphics.
No,
You
but
know,
what I'm
I
actually
come up with an idea and
but,
then
but what
she's
I'm actually
amazing.
saying, right, is that
Amazing.
yeah, but I'm just saying that a lot of what people see and what they actually will kind of make a judgment on is based on what they see, right? People will see Yanni in a meeting of a bunch of intellectuals. All the intellectuals don't know her history, but know that, man, she's a lot of fun. Look at her. She's so energetic. She's so engaged. She's wanted to help and support, and what happens is that it's kind of like this, is that a photographer once told me once, is that if you take a picture of yourself, you're going to look at the parts you don't like. Other people are going to look at the parts that they do like, right? And I think that the imposter syndrome is kind of like that. We take a picture of ourselves in a certain situation, and it's kind of like who's that? Eric Clapton, Tears in Heaven, where he doesn't feel like he deserves to be there. It's like yeah, I think that some of us we sometimes forget that the roles we play isn't who we are, it's what we do, and that mastery in any role isn't an outcome, it's a process. And if we can learn to accept ourselves when we're not at our best, it's going to help us to be able to accept ourselves when we are at our best. I mean, even take a look at the compliment that your Gallum got, but she had to deflect that. And the thing is the compliment, when you can accept yourself at the lower level of emotions, you'll be able to accept yourself at the higher. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I am a great artist. And somebody like Kasha, she really has a lot of confidence in what she's doing, right? Because yeah, she does. Her degree has helped her to be effective in a lot of different roles in her life. Not only the graphic arts, but just the confidence in other areas and the way she leads, right? Because she was able to do something that she started, she finished, and people judge her on it, and she passed, right? So there's a confidence that comes from that as well, right? So I think that a lot of it is just really number one, not comparing ourselves. Comparison is one of the greatest thieves of joy. Either comparing ourselves to other people or even comparing ourselves to ourselves, even to our younger version of ourselves, right? And that's where, yeah, people get really depressed. Oh, I used to do that. I used to do that. Now I'm not that, and this and that, and whatever. Right. So, Mark, I'm complete.
Yeah, I wanted to add that I want to just sort of add to what Yanni was saying, or just comment on it, which is she was saying she found herself in these rooms and was looking around the room and like, why am I in this room? You know? And I think it's because, Yanni, you have an incredible positive attitude, and you are a happy person. You know, I'm sure not all the time, you know, like none of us are all the time, but it's a very effervescent, bubbly, happy, attractive vibration that you're bringing. So people that are also successful also have that same positive attitude. They're looking for the good in the world. They're looking for the opportunity. They're looking to see the positive in others. And as a result, that positive attitude gets you into that room, right? Which is what I've experienced as well. Like when I'm at my best and I'm in that positive vibration and I'm focused in on what it is that I'm going for, with a positive expectation, and I'm going to receive it because I know I can do it. Then you get into those rooms, you get into those places, those doors open for you because of that positive attitude. And I think the reason why is the people that are in the room right now want more people at the party, right? They want more people there, right? They want to be around other people that are having a good time, right? It's like once your cup is full, you want to be around a bunch of other full cups, right? And or you want to spill over and support others that are moving on up into the position that you've gotten yourself into, and support other people on the journey. So I think those rooms that are filled with success are looking for people like you, and they identify people like you, Yanni, through your positive attitude, right? And they want to be part of your growth-based story by knowing that, hey, I might have had a little bit of a positive impact on Yanni, and look what she's accomplished along the way. And I get to call her my friend and my and or associate or partner or whatever the relationship is, right? But they're part of that story. And I think that's what it's kind of like love. Like when you have a lot of love in you, you spill over and you give that love to others, right? And it just makes more love, right? And
Yeah.
so I think success is the same way. Once you have a lot of it, you want it to spill over and give it to others so that you're surrounded by it. Because really the last point I want to make is nobody wants to be a slumlord, right? Like you don't want to be the only guy in the neighborhood that's successful and everybody else is poor, right? Because then everybody's trying to like jack your car and and steal from your house and everything else. Like it, you want to be in a prosperous community. You don't want to be in a scarce community. So I think those that have succeeded want others to succeed, and those that have not succeeded see it as a competition. And to your point, Ray, and I just want to finish on this, that individual that was telling you couldn't sell your paintings forever, whatever you wanted, that was a competitive based, scarcity based mindset. And that is the definition, at least in my point, of this imposter syndrome. She was struggling with imposter syndrome and trying to project that onto you. And then when you see that negativity, you just know that the person's just having their own mental battle, right? It has nothing to do with you. It's their own self-limiting beliefs they're trying to project onto somebody else.
And just before we go to your Gallum and Kasha, I just wanted to add that this is a big perhaps, what Mark just said, right? It's like what we need to remember is that we don't see the world as we are. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. So quite often what happens is really, when you think about it, is that when we get inspired, right? Inspiration, right? We know the what, but not the how. We know where we want to go, but we don't know how that's going to happen. But when we follow our inspiration, the how happens. So sometimes what happens is that if we were to focus on leading people more of who they are, you can always teach them the what to do. But if you're focused on people just based on what you think they can do, right, or what they've done, but not at who they are, because I think there's a really big important part of this is that, are they willing to change? Is there a willingness to change for this particular role so that they can do the actions that are necessary for someone to be successful? Right? I think sometimes we put so much emphasis on what they've done, what they've achieved, that we don't really know if this person is willing to. Does this person have a growth mindset still? Are they still willing to try new things or to do things that are required in order to be successful in this role? And I think that one of the things that when I think about Yanni, you're not in that room because of what you do. You're in that room because of who you are. And because of who you are, you could learn the what to do, right? But if you went in there with a fixed mindset, it would become very evident to people who have a higher level of awareness. And so I think that who we are being is as important as what we've done or what we can do, because who we are being really talks to whether or not we're willing to do what is necessary in order for us to be effective in this particular role. So as a leader, it's important that you just also look at people and really start to, through again connection and questions and inquiry, to find out who it is that you're actually leading and whether or not they have a willingness, they have a growth mindset, they have a willingness to change. Because if not, you're going to consistently be trying to force that square peg into a round hole, and that's not going to be a lot of fun. Your Gallum and then Kasha.
From just thinking about the vision part, and that's where I appreciate actually for me to be continually being clear about my vision, because it's it holds me accountable for my own thinking, and then also when I'm leading others, especially when with the drawing, the question we just had about me being the painting. Now the way I perceive myself, and as I investigate also my journey, I see myself as a creative person, but specifically creative writer. See, so because of that, when I get that title of, you say, painting, right? My brain or my system was like, wait a minute, what? You was taught this, not necessarily, by nature. So that's why, I kind of respond back. And you have me thinking, actually, that is true. I'm a creative being. It doesn't matter what it is. And also you have me remember when you say about if my cup is full, I couldn't help but to share it. That was one of the questions also you asked about, if I have everything that I want as far as financially, what would I do? And my response has been pretty much, to be that person for the next person, and which is sharing, uplifting, and inspiring. And but for me to do that is to own up myself. From the moment I was born, I'm sure somebody has told me to wait for them for their permission. And me now coming to get to know myself, wait a minute, I am responsible for my internal self, because like what Mark says, yes, I get these beautiful inspiration, but as soon as I look up, and I see the world, I'm like, wait a minute, do you know where you at? You need permission from that person or this, institution, whatever. And then that's when the person like myself also gets stopped. And then I get another hit inspiration. But by continuing to, to learn and grow and then open up that path with, Graphica, thank God for that, is when I am able to set myself free. And for me to, if I am free, which means I share this message, hope, and then whatever tools that help me along the way, then the next person will be free as well. But it's all inside.
Well, Gasha and then Mark.
So two things are coming to my mind, and one of them is the story I experienced in the United States when I moved here. I didn't speak any English, and I ended up, by looking for the school for my daughter preschool, I ended up meeting a Polish girl who was born here but never spoke English. She had both parents Polish, and she was so curious about me, my husband, my daughter, and all of us. She wanted to sink into my life in order to experience Polishness, right? And so we became good friends. And years later, when our kids were at the preschool, still at the preschool level, when you have children, you start going to birthday parties. And I ran off my daughter went to Montessori school, which is a private school here. Probably the most expensive school in my valley. And, but that's not the point, okay? That's not what I'm flashing. I'm going to different point. And when you do birthday parties, what do? You invite children from, usually from your child group, right? Or from the preschool, which in my case, it was not a big school, so there were more cute children sometimes than just in Zuda's class. And so that particular friend, she lives next to the very expensive neighborhood in my town, next to the golf course. And she's always underlining that, she's like, part of that neighborhood. And, she has this obsession with people thinking she's as rich or as smart and as rich as other people. And one day after this party, she literally was crying to my face. And she said, and I'm like, Nancy, what are you talking about? Those are just friends.
I didn't hear anything you said about the crying part.
The crying part, what was she saying?
She was crying about the fact she was crying to me, and she could not understand. I came to this country. She was born in this country. She lives next to rich people, and she never had doctors, lawyers, or judges at her house. Okay, so now coming back, Yanni, to you, is that, and I told her, like, what are you talking about? Those are friends. So I think when you guys are talking about somebody being in a room with smarter people, that's bullshit, just because they had the education. If you are looking into what's going on right now in the world, a lot of people that they've run and they created the most successful businesses, that those are the people that actually didn't finish schools. And from another perspective of the world ending, doesn't matter as much you believe in it or not, but the people are going to survive are not the people that necessarily have the degrees in the frames. And I will give you an example. I had a very good friend who was a doctor. He retired. And when in his house the bulb was out, his wife had to call the handyman. Who's gonna survive, that doctor? Or the people that they have skills because they've done things, they experience jobs, they know what to do with their hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I know we're at the top of the hour here, so I just wanted to end it on a positive note, which I think imposter syndrome stems from having a negative self-image. And having a positive self-image is how things happen. If you don't believe it's going to happen for you, it's not going to happen because nobody's going to do it for you. Right. But if you have a positive attitude, you can overcome. Right. And it's a growth-based mindset. And yes, looking at yourself in the mirror is accepting that you haven't yet you haven't reached the destination yet, but it doesn't mean you're not on the journey. It doesn't mean it's not unfolding. It doesn't mean, every good road trip, there's lots of good stops along the way, right? You might have the vision in mind of the destination you want to go to, but have fun along the way. And that's just the positive growth-based mindset that I'm trying to refer to. But if you don't have that, if you don't have a positive expectation, that road trip isn't going anywhere. You're going to be parked on the side of the road and you're never going to get there, right? Because nobody's going to do it for you. Nobody can do it for you. It's your life, right? And so I just want to end on the importance of having a positive attitude is how you overcome imposter syndrome.
And I think one thing I want to add to this too, right, is that I know Yanni said if you're not willing to learn, no one can help you, right? I think it was Byron Katie that when she does work with people, she says that if you argue for your limitations, you'll win every time. And we've heard all those things that if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly.
And really, and I think that an imposter syndrome is really, if you dig a little deeper, is probably you mismanaging your emotion with your inner critic.
Exactly.
And I think that really taking some time to really work on your inner critic and understand your inner critic has great intentions. It's not trying to hurt you. It wants you to play small because they don't want you to be disappointed. But
it wants you to be safe. It wants you to not stretch and grow because it knows that if you don't grow, then it's going to be safe.
Yeah. And safe is not where the magic happens. But
no.
Just before we go, because I think Rayanne's got her hand up for something. What did you want to say, Ray?
Oh, no, I just wanted to say I had, Carolyn Mize has some cool things because she has, different kinds of children that you were when you were young, right? So you kind of go through and you decide, like I'm a magical child. So there's different children that you were when you were young and how you dreamed about things. And then she also has a shadow side of everything. So you it's kind of a fun read if you get a chance to get some of Carolyn Mize's.
What's the book called?
Well, actually the ones that I have is I have those little cards and then you pick out which cards you are.
Yeah.
And I did it for Walter before too. Then you kind of see your good side and your bad side to each thing.
Yeah,
the positive and the.
Yeah, and I think the thing
She's
about
got some cool things for
I think
that.
the one thing that I've also noticed too is that when we can start looking at our emotions when we're in the lower levels of energy, not as bad, but just as lower energy, that's it. And when we look at ourselves at the higher levels of energy, not as good, but just that we're at the higher levels of energy, it makes acceptance a lot easier because the reason why we sometimes have issues with acceptance has to do with judgments and labels that we put on things. Right. So just know that all of us are incredible human beings. We're on this journey. We're growing, we're learning. There is no over there. Like we're not going to be happy when we get over there if we're not happy now, right? That's why the whole idea that there is no over there, it's always now. So if you're not having a good time now, you got to ask yourself, why am I not? What's going on? What wound do I need to heal from? What area of my life do I need to grow in? And I know that this sparked, and I know we got to go one more minute here because Kasha, something came up for Kasha. And she's got such wonderful hair today that I can't not see that.
The Elvis hair.
Kasha, what's your final thought on this whole topic?
Final thought is look at your grass because it's green.
Look at your grass because it's green.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The grass is not greener anywhere else.
And
Yeah,
it
water
won't.
it.
Yeah, and
Love your grass.
yeah, and I think that if you can love yourself, if we could learn to love ourselves, it makes it a lot easier accepting the love from other people. Right? But if we don't love ourselves, we're always going to think, well, if they really knew what I was like, that's why I've worked as I've gotten older to just be myself, in whatever role I'm in. Quite often when people see me in a coach role, they see a role of that I'm playing, but it's not completely me. I know Cash has been around and she notices that sometimes when I'm on Zoom, I don't always wear pants and I just kind of go through it. And Mark's seen me, me and Ryan trying to
Runs around the house with the suit on top and his
Yeah.
underwear.
Yeah, we've gone to Kamloops and tried to paddleboard as a couple, and we're just nightmare. So we're all just human. Let's just kind of take a deep breath and just know that people get, and then this is the final thing I wanted to say. They did a study where they were putting on a bunch of stuff and they wanted to rate different emotions. And you think that love would be the big one, but they were saying that they found something that really really emits, and what that is authenticity. Right? When you are just yourself, like people feel it. And you know it's like when you're around somebody that's just totally themselves, right? Like my friend up in Kamloops, not Mark, but another one. He owns a ghost town. That dude is more authentic than anybody to a fault. Like he'll tell people to F off, it's closed, whatever, right? If people get him, right? And then other times he's just so, he comes in, shows everybody around, takes pictures. He could be like an incredible experience for people that are coming to look at a ghost town. But he's always himself. He doesn't sort of pander to be liked. And when you do something that he doesn't like, he lets you know. And when you do something that he likes, he lets you know. But because of that, his business has always been, they keep on coming. Those tour buses keep on coming, and he keeps on selling them stuff, right? And what they like is just that he just is who he is, right? So not everybody likes him at any given moment, but he's okay with who he is, and that's all that matters. It's his town, right? He's the sheriff. We're all sheriffs in our lives, right? We all, if we could just learn to be more authentic, and then it doesn't, what other people think of us is their business. And although sometimes in a role that we're playing, we can't be telling people to F off, it wouldn't be appropriate. But we can still be real in a particular role and be ourselves, and not worry about what other people think, right? So just remember, the person that most influences you, the person that's the hardest on you, is not other people, it's our inner critic. So learn to love ourselves. And on that, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Bye for now.